Rain slashed the fields in hard sheets, turning the dirt into thick, sticky mud. Lightning split the sky, followed by a deafening roar that shook Gideon's small farmhouse. He froze, heart hammering. That sound, it wasn't thunder. Something heavy landed in the field beyond the barn, crushing young saplings under its weight. Without thinking, Gideon grabbed a lantern and ran into the storm. His boots sank into mud with every step, but he didn't slow. In the dim, flickering light, he saw it, a creature, enormous and wounded, lying half in the mud. Its scales shimmered faintly, glowing silver under the lightning, and jagged armor plates protruded from its back. One of its front limbs had been torn, revealing something metallic beneath, a strange alien mechanism. Gideon stopped short, catching his breath. Fear clawed at him. He had heard stories, strange creatures that arrived at night, tales farmers whispered after long days, but he had never imagined standing in front of one. It hissed, a low, vibrating sound, sharp and almost human, yet strange enough to send shivers down his spine. The creature's eyes flickered open, brilliant amber with slit pupils, and they fixed on him. For a moment, Gideon thought it would attack. Then the creature did something unexpected. It shifted its weight slightly and pushed its ruined limb toward him as if asking for help. Gideon's heart pounded. He swallowed hard, then stepped forward. I can help, he said, his voice barely louder than the wind. He didn't know why he spoke. Some instinct, courage or stubborn human defiance, made him act. The creature's chest rose and fell with heavy, labored breaths. A thin trail of smoke curled from its nose vents, and Gideon realized it was injured far worse than he could have guessed. There was no time to hesitate. He dropped to his knees and tugged off his jacket, trying to shield the broken limb from the pouring rain. The creature growled softly, a low, trembling sound that was almost pain, almost warning. Its head dipped slightly, acknowledging his effort. Lightning flashed again, revealing the full extent of its wounds. One of the jagged armor plates had punctured deep into its side. From the gash, a faint blue light pulsed rhythmically like a heartbeat. Gideon froze. Mechanical? Magical? He had no idea. But it was alive and it needed him. That was enough. He tugged a rope from his barn, thinking he could stabilize the limb, maybe drag it to shelter. The creature hissed, flaring its wings slightly, and Gideon froze again. Panic surged. But then he noticed the creature wasn't attacking. It was scared, exhausted, wounded beyond reason, but it wasn't evil. Its survival depended on him, and somehow, instinctively, Gideon knew he could make a difference. Come on, he whispered, voice shaking but steady. He tied the rope carefully around the broken limb, mindful of the pulsing blue light. The creature flinched with every touch, and a sharp pain cut through Gideon's chest at the sound. He pressed on. He had to help. One careful motion at a time, he managed to guide the creature inch by inch toward the barn. The rain soaked them both, mixing mud and water into a slick, treacherous mess. Finally they reached the barn. Gideon pulled open the doors, wincing as they creaked under the wind's force. Inside, the creature hesitated. Its eyes darted around the wooden walls, nostrils flaring. Then it lowered itself slowly, trusting him enough to enter. Gideon felt his chest tighten. Fear, relief, awe all tangled together. He had never thought he would share his barn with something like this. Something not of this world. He laid the creature on the hay, careful to avoid the glowing crystal embedded in its side. It made a low, rhythmic sound, almost like breathing, almost like a warning. Gideon knelt beside it, soaked through, and touched its scaled shoulder lightly. The scales were warm despite the rain, and beneath them he felt faint vibrations. Life, energy, intelligence. Something extraordinary lived here, broken and desperate. A sudden clatter made him snap upright. One of the barn's windows had been blown open by the wind. Lightning illuminated movement outside. Shapes, maybe more creatures, maybe something worse. The dragon warrior's head jerked up, nostrils flaring. Its amber eyes locked on the shadows beyond the rain, and a low growl reverberated through the barn, vibrating the wooden walls. Gideon's breath caught. He didn't know what was coming, but he did know this. He couldn't run. He had chosen to help, and whatever waited in the storm wasn't going to let him, and his wounded guest, leave easily. The crystal pulsed suddenly, brightening the barn with an eerie blue glow, and the dragon warrior twitched violently, as if reacting to something invisible outside. Gideon stepped back instinctively, heart hammering. Then the creature let out a sharp, guttural cry that echoed across the fields, half warning, half plea. Something was coming. Something that knew exactly where they were. And Gideon realized, with a mixture of fear and determination, that the storm was only the beginning. The rain eased, but the wind still howled, rattling the barn walls. Gideon crouched beside the dragon warrior, soaking wet and trembling, yet every instinct screamed that he could not rest. The glowing crystal embedded in the warrior's side pulsed softly now, as if breathing with it. Gideon reached out to examine it, careful not to touch the wound directly. He didn't know what it was, alien technology, magic, or something far stranger, but it clearly mattered. A shadow flickered past the barn window. Gideon froze. Lightning cut across the sky, illuminating shapes in the field. Small, metallic drones hovering silently, scanning the area with blinking red lights. They moved in patterns, precise and deliberate, like predators circling a wounded prey. The warrior hissed, low and warning, as its amber eyes tracked the drone's movements. Gideon's heart pounded. He had never seen anything like this. He could run, but the warrior couldn't. And leaving it here meant certain death if those drones found them. He took a deep breath, forcing his fear down. "We need to hide you," he muttered. "I can't let them take you, or whatever that crystal is." He grabbed spare hay bales, stacking them to shield the warrior from view. Each movement made the warrior flinch, but it stayed still, trusting him enough to let him work. Gideon's mind raced. He had no weapons, no advanced tools, only the farming equipment he kept for tending the fields. But he had ingenuity, and sometimes that was enough. From the barn corner, he grabbed a rope and hooks, improvising a crude pulley system. If he could lift the warrior just enough, he might conceal it beneath hay and tarps. He worked quickly, drenched to the bone, muscles straining. The warrior's head followed his every motion, eyes narrowing in concentration. It was as if it understood him, or maybe it just recognized determination in humans. Gideon liked to think it was the first. A sudden clatter outside made him jerk. One of the drones had landed near the barn door, spinning in place and scanning. Its red eye glowed, sharp and precise. Gideon froze, holding his breath. The warrior growled softly, tail flicking, wings twitching. Gideon realized it wasn't just scanning, it was analyzing, calculating, waiting for the right moment to act. Thinking fast, Gideon grabbed a lantern and slammed it to the ground. The light bounced wildly across the barn walls. The drone's sensors seemed momentarily confused. Gideon seized the chance to tug the warrior slightly beneath the hay, hiding it from immediate view. The drone hummed, a faint vibration in the floor, and then lifted off, circling outside like a ghost. Gideon exhaled sharply, his chest burning with relief. "That was too close," he muttered. He knelt beside the warrior again, tracing the edge of the glowing crystal. "Whatever's in you, it's important. And they want it. I don't know why, but I'm not letting them take it." The warrior's chest rose and fell with ragged breaths. It hissed, then shifted slightly, revealing a shallow groove along its side. Gideon noticed symbols etched faintly into the metal limb, alien writing of some kind. He traced them with his fingers, curiosity mixing with fear. A faint vibration ran through the crystal in response. The warrior stiffened, wings twitching as though the markings and the crystal were connected. Thunder rolled in the distance. Another drone emerged, larger than the first, scanning in deliberate, almost sentient patterns. Gideon realized then that these weren't ordinary machines. They were coordinated, intelligent, hunting with purpose. He had to act, and quickly. He looked around the barn for anything he could use. Hooks, ropes, spare planks, maybe he could set a trap to delay them. He tied ropes across the doorway, anchoring them to heavy barrels. A plank balanced precariously on top, ready to swing down if triggered. Not perfect, but it might give them a few extra moments. Every second counted. The warrior shifted, eyes following Gideon's movements. It hissed, a sound that felt like warning and approval at once. Gideon smiled faintly through his fear. He liked to think the creature understood he was trying, not just to save it but to fight back in whatever small way he could. Then the crystal pulsed sharply, bright and blue, illuminating the barn. Gideon's stomach dropped. He hadn't touched it, hadn't moved it, but somehow it was reacting to something outside. The larger drone paused at the edge of the field, hovering as if sensing the energy. A chill ran down Gideon's spine. Whatever this crystal was, it had power, and it wasn't just a beacon. It could signal. The warrior let out a guttural sound, almost a roar, low and vibrating through the wooden walls. Gideon flinched but didn't move. He realized it wasn't anger, it was fear and maybe a warning. The drone shifted closer, scanning more carefully now. Gideon swallowed, heart hammering. He didn't have weapons. He didn't have allies. But he had courage, quick thinking, and the trust of a creature stronger than anything on Earth. He held his breath as the drone's red eye swept the barn doorway. Then, a spark of intuition. He yanked a rope, sending the plank swinging into the drone's path. Sparks flew as metal scraped metal. The drone wobbled, spun, and then shot back into the night, temporarily disabled. Gideon collapsed against the wall, soaked, exhausted, shaking. The warrior's breathing slowed slightly, settling beneath the hay. Gideon ran a hand over its scales. "You're safe, for now," he whispered, though he knew this was only temporary. The drones weren't defeated, they had only been delayed. And whatever force sent them would not give up easily. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the field. In the far distance, beyond the swirling rain and darkness, Gideon saw shapes moving. More than drones, he realized, bigger, faster. His chest tightened. This was far from over. Whatever was hunting the warrior, whatever wanted that crystal, was coming. And Gideon knew something else, deep in his bones. The small farm, the simple life he had known, it was gone. He was now part of something larger, something dangerous, and his choices in the next moments could decide not just the warrior's fate, but something far bigger. The crystal pulsed violently again, almost screaming with energy, lighting up the barn with an unearthly glow. The warrior twitched beneath the hay, and Gideon froze, realizing it was reacting to something he couldn't see. Something was approaching. Something that would not wait. The shadow outside the barn loomed larger, a jagged silhouette moving faster than anything Gideon had ever seen. The crystal embedded in the warrior's side pulsed violently, sending waves of light across the wooden walls. The dragon warrior twitched beneath the hay, muscles tensing as if ready to leap, but it couldn't move fully. Gideon's mind raced. He had no idea what this thing was, bigger than the drones, smarter than anything human, yet it felt connected to the crystal somehow. He grabbed a metal pitchfork from the corner, holding it like a spear. He had no plan beyond defending himself and the creature beside him. The shadow shifted again, this time closer to the barn doors, revealing a shape vaguely humanoid but with glinting metal and jagged edges, its red optics scanning with ruthless precision. Gideon swallowed hard. He wasn't just facing drones anymore, this was something alive, intelligent, and deadly. "Hang on," he whispered to the warrior. The creature hissed, half in fear, half in recognition. Gideon noticed the alien symbols on its mechanical limb glowing faintly in rhythm with the crystal. Maybe they were connected, maybe they weren't, but if they were, the warrior wasn't just a wounded refugee. It was a key. And Gideon realized, sharply, that the key was now in his hands. A sudden idea struck. He grabbed the lantern, swinging it toward the shadow, baiting it into the barn. The metal figure hesitated, scanning, then moved incautiously. Gideon's heart pounded, but he pressed on, sliding the hay bales slightly to expose the crystal. Sparks of energy flared as the crystal pulsed again, sending the warrior into a low, vibrating hiss. Gideon froze, then made a decision. He reached out, holding his hand just above the crystal. The moment he touched it, a rush of images shot through his mind. Flashes of distant planets, cities in ruin, creatures like the warrior fighting battles across stars. He staggered backward, breathless. The warrior's eyes seemed to lock on him, amber and bright, almost pleading. He had touched something not meant for humans, yet somehow it had accepted him. He understood then, the warrior wasn't just wounded. It was a protector sent across the galaxy to safeguard the crystal from forces far beyond Earth. The shadow at the barn door shifted violently, responding to the crystal's pulse. It screeched, a sound like metal tearing, and the barn shook. Gideon's muscles tensed. There was no way to fight it directly. He looked around. Hooks, ropes, hay planks, he had to improvise. He tied ropes to barrels and created a swinging trap just like before, but faster, more precise. If he timed it perfectly, he could buy just enough seconds. The metal creature lunged. Gideon yanked the rope. A plank swung down, striking the alien with a deafening clang. Sparks flew. The creature staggered, its optics flickering, but it didn't fall. Gideon's heart sank. It was far stronger than he imagined. The warrior hissed, flaring its wings despite the injury, sending a gust of wind that pushed Gideon aside. The human stumbled, but he stayed focused. "Trust me," he muttered to the warrior. The creature understood enough to crouch slightly, ready to move at the slightest command. Gideon gritted his teeth. If he could activate the crystal somehow, maybe it would repel the attacker. He reached for the glowing runes on the warrior's limb, tracing them quickly. The crystal responded immediately, pulsing brighter, sending a shockwave across the barn. The alien screeched again, retreating momentarily as its sensors were overwhelmed. Gideon's eyes widened. He realized the warrior and the crystal were linked in a feedback loop, its life, its energy, and its intelligence all tied to the device. If he could control it, even partially, he could turn the tide. It was dangerous. It could kill him. but it was their only chance. He clenched his jaw and pressed his hand more firmly on the crystal. A surge of power rushed through him like nothing human should feel. Pain, fear, and clarity hit all at once. The warrior's body shuddered violently, recovering strength despite its injuries. Amber eyes glowed, scanning the barn, then focusing outward. The metal shadow hesitated, sensing the shift. Gideon took a deep breath. "Now!" he shouted, yanking a rope to drop another plank. Sparks flew. The creature outside faltered, its systems destabilized by the combined energy of the crystal and the warrior's response. It screeched, then retreated, its red optics flickering in confusion. Gideon sank to the floor, exhausted, breathing heavily. The warrior lay still beneath the hay, calm now, energy returning. He reached out, touching its scales gently. "You're safe, for now," he whispered. The creature hissed softly, almost a sigh of relief. For a moment, silence filled the barn, broken only by the rain pattering against the roof. But Gideon knew this was just the beginning. The crystal pulsed faintly now, sending rhythmic waves through the barn. It had shown him a glimpse of something larger, a war raging across stars, a galaxy far beyond Earth's understanding. And they were part of it. He realized then, sharply, that his small farm, his quiet life, had been replaced by a responsibility far greater than anything he had imagined. A flash of lightning revealed distant shapes moving beyond the barn. The first hint of reinforcements, bigger and faster than the drones, approaching with purpose. Gideon's stomach tightened. The warrior stirred, wings twitching, amber eyes locked on the darkness outside. Gideon took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had survived this first encounter, understood the truth behind the warrior, and even influenced the immediate threat, but the real danger had only just begun. And in that moment he knew one thing with absolute certainty. He was no longer a simple farmer. He was a human standing against forces no one else could even imagine, his courage and quick thinking the first line of defense in a war that stretched across worlds. The crystal pulsed again, brighter than before, as if sensing the approaching fleet. And Gideon realized that what he had done so far was only a test. The real trial, the impossible odds, the greater enemy, was waiting outside the barn doors, ready to strike. The barn shook violently as the massive silhouette rose above the trees, casting a shadow larger than any building Gideon had ever seen. Its red optics glowed like molten fire, scanning the fields with precision. The rain had stopped, but the wind whipped fiercely, tugging at the barn doors and carrying the metallic screech of the approaching threat. Gideon's chest tightened. This was no ordinary drone. This was the commander, the ultimate hunter of the crystal, and it was coming for them. The warrior beneath the hay stirred, wings twitching, muscles rippling despite the wounds. Its amber eyes locked on Gideon. For a brief moment their gazes met. There was a silent understanding. He was human, fragile, but brilliant, courageous. He could not run. He would stand. And together they had a chance, if only a slim one. Gideon scanned the barn quickly. The ropes, barrels, planks, they might slow the creature but not stop it. The crystal pulsed, sending rhythmic, powerful vibrations through the barn, and the warrior hissed, responding to its energy. Gideon realized the only way to survive was to combine the crystal's energy with the warrior's strength. He could not control it fully, but he could guide it. He had to try. He knelt, pressing his hand onto the crystal, feeling it vibrate like a living heartbeat. The warrior hissed again, flaring its wings, leaning into Gideon's touch. A surge of power coursed through him, terrifyingly intense. Lightning-like energy crackled along the warrior's metal limb, tracing the alien symbols. Gideon gritted his teeth, resisting the pain, focusing on guiding the energy outward. The barn doors groaned and splintered as the massive commander slammed into them, shaking the wooden structure violently. Gideon's heart raced. The creature outside was relentless, stronger than anything he had imagined. Sparks flew as its metallic limbs tore at the barn walls. Every second counted. Every moment of hesitation could mean death. "Now," he shouted to the warrior. The dragon warrior lifted its head, eyes blazing amber. Its wings spread fully, pushing a gust of wind that rattled the barn. The crystal pulsed violently, channeling energy through the warrior's limb, sending a wave of blue light toward the intruder. The commander screeched, momentarily blinded, sensors overloaded by the energy. Gideon felt the barn floor tremble beneath him, but he pressed harder against the crystal. The warrior twisted its body, a powerful motion despite the injuries, directing the energy surge straight at the approaching silhouette. Sparks flew, wood splintered, and the air crackled with heat. The commander stumbled back, red optics flickering wildly. Gideon's arms burned, muscles screamed, but he did not release the crystal. The warrior flared again, claws scraping the floor, wings beating a hurricane-force gust. The combination of human determination and alien power drove the commander back, inch by inch. A deafening screech echoed across the field as the commander surged forward one last time. Gideon knew this was the moment of truth. He focused every thought, every ounce of courage into the crystal, into the warrior. The blue light intensified, the barn glowing like a beacon in the dark night. The commander faltered, systems failing under the combined force. Then, in a sudden violent burst, it was knocked backward, crashing into the mud outside with a metallic roar. Sparks and smoke rose from its shattered limbs. Gideon collapsed against the floor, chest heaving, soaked and trembling. The warrior lay beneath the hay, breathing heavily but alive, its amber eyes softening as if acknowledging the human beside it. "You did it?" Gideon whispered, voice raw. The creature hissed softly, a sound like gratitude, almost like a sigh. For the first time, Gideon felt a spark of hope amid the chaos. But victory came at a cost. The crystal pulsed irregularly, sending sharp shocks of energy through the barn. The warrior twitched violently. Gideon realized the energy was unstable, tied to the approaching fleet he had glimpsed before. The war was far from over. The commander's defeat was temporary, it had been a scout, a test. The real threat was coming, larger, faster, and more intelligent. Lightning split the sky, illuminating movement beyond the fields. More shapes appeared, ships, drones, machines, scanning, hunting, converging. Gideon's stomach tightened. He had survived this encounter through courage and ingenuity, but he knew he could not face the full force alone. The crystal pulsed, almost screaming as if warning him. He looked at the warrior. Its wing was bent, its metal limbs sparking, but its eyes blazed with renewed strength. They had survived together. Gideon's mind raced. He had learned that human courage, quick thinking, and determination could influence events far beyond his understanding. He had changed the outcome once and he could do it again, but only if he trusted himself and the creature beside him completely. The warrior's head tilted toward him, a subtle gesture that somehow conveyed urgency, trust, and a warning all at once. Gideon understood they had to move. The barn was no longer safe. Every second they stayed would bring the approaching fleet closer. The crystal's energy surged, a pulse of power too strong to ignore, lighting the barn in brilliant blue. Then, without warning, the barn floor cracked, timber snapping under the strain of the unleashed energy. The warrior hissed sharply, wings beating wildly, knocking Gideon aside. Sparks flew as the crystal flared again. Outside, the approaching forces hesitated, sensing the surge, wary of the energy the human had helped channel. Gideon scrambled to his feet, adrenaline pumping, heart racing. He knew what he had to do. He had no weapons, no allies, only his courage, his mind, and the warrior beside him. The crystal's pulse synced with the warrior's heartbeat. Together they could hold back the first wave, maybe buy time for something greater. He reached out, pressing both hands on the crystal, willing it to stabilize. The warrior's growl vibrated through the barn, low and powerful, echoing Gideon's own determination. The blue light flared once more, brighter than ever, blindingly intense. The approaching fleet froze at the edge of the field, hesitant, sensing the power they had never encountered. Gideon felt the surge of energy course through him, terrifying and exhilarating, and realized that for the first time he wasn't just a farmer. He was a human standing against impossible odds, shaping the outcome of a battle far larger than he had ever imagined. And then the crystal pulsed again, violently, almost screaming, illuminating movement beyond the horizon. Something massive, faster, and more intelligent than any drone or commander had yet revealed. Gideon clenched his fists. The real trial was coming. But for now he had survived. He had fought. And the warrior, wounded but alive, had survived because of him. The fleet had stopped at the edge of the field, hovering like a storm ready to strike. Massive shapes glinted in the moonlight, their red optics scanning, their engines humming like a low, threatening growl. Gideon's chest pounded, every nerve alert. He looked at the dragon warrior beside him, breathing ragged but steady now, amber eyes glowing with quiet intelligence. Together they had survived impossible odds before, but this was different. This was the real test. He pressed his hand against the crystal again. The energy pulsed through him, terrifying and beautiful, a rhythm that connected him to the warrior and to something far larger than Earth. Images flashed in his mind, distant planets, battles fought across galaxies, creatures of unimaginable power, all linked to the crystal. He realized the truth. The warrior was not just a soldier, it was a guardian. And now he, a simple human farmer, had become part of its mission. Ready? He whispered. The warrior tilted its head, flaring its wings slightly in response. Gideon swallowed hard. He wasn't a soldier, he wasn't trained for this, but he had courage. He had quick thinking. And he had empathy, the understanding that sometimes, to protect life, you had to act when others would flee. The fleet surged forward suddenly, engines screaming, cutting through the night. The crystal flared in response, pulsing with violent energy. Gideon could feel it reacting to the enemy, connecting with the warrior in a feedback loop. Together, human and creature became a single force, a merging of instinct, determination, and alien power. The barn shook again as the first wave of machines crashed through the outer field, tearing saplings and soil into mud. Gideon grabbed a rope, lashing the warrior's limb to stabilize it further, keeping it grounded while it prepared to strike. Sparks of energy arced from the crystal, sending waves of force outward. The machines faltered, their red optics flickering as if shocked by a force they had not calculated. Gideon's mind raced. He had to act with precision. One wrong move and both he and the warrior would be destroyed. He remembered the patterns of the drones from before, the way they scanned, calculated, and attacked. He guided the crystal's energy, focusing the pulses in rhythm with the warrior's movement. With each surge, one machine faltered, then another, until several were disabled, tipped over into the mud. The warrior lifted its head, hissing low, wings beating, tail flicking with power. Gideon realized something astonishing. The creature was not only responding to him, it was learning from him. Its movements became sharper, more precise, coordinated with his own decisions. Human ingenuity and alien instinct were combining, a partnership neither side could have predicted. Then a shadow eclipsed the moon. One of the largest command ships, far bigger than any drone or scout, descended toward the field. Its optics blazed, scanning, calculating. Gideon's stomach clenched. This was the real enemy, the one behind the attacks. And he had no weapons, no reinforcements, only the warrior and his courage. He looked at the creature. Its amber eyes met his, and for the first time he saw something almost human in them. Trust, hope, determination. He nodded once. "We do this together," he said. The warrior flared its wings, lifting slightly, shaking off mud, shaking off fear, ready. The command ship fired, sending a beam of energy toward the barn. Gideon pressed his hands harder against the crystal. The energy surged, bending the beam, deflecting it harmlessly into the field. The warrior lunged, its metal limbs striking the ground and sending shockwaves through the approaching machines. Sparks flew, metal bent, and one by one the enemy machines faltered, unable to calculate or respond to the human-guided assault. Gideon could hardly believe it. His hands ached, his muscles screamed, but he kept the pulse steady, feeding it rhythmically through the crystal. The warrior adapted, striking faster, moving with grace, creating a chain reaction of destruction across the fleet's first wave. Machines toppled, engines fizzled, red optics dimmed. Every success fueled his determination. Finally, the command ship hesitated, its system struggling to adapt to a single human directing alien power through a wounded warrior. Gideon realized the truth. Intelligence, courage, and ingenuity, human traits, could change the course of fate, even against forces centuries ahead in technology. The warrior's wings beat one final, powerful time, sending a pulse of energy so strong it lit up the entire field. The command ship faltered, engines sparking, then retreated, dragging the remaining drones and scouts with it. Silence fell, broken only by the wind and the distant dripping of rain from the barn roof. Gideon sank to the ground, exhausted, drenched, mud covering him, heart racing. The warrior lowered itself beside him, breathing heavily but alive. He placed a trembling hand on its scales. We did it," he whispered. The creature hissed softly, almost a laugh, then nudged him gently with its head. Trust, gratitude, partnership. The human had acted when logic screamed to flee, and the warrior had survived because of him. Lightning flashed, revealing the field now quiet, broken only by flattened mud and scattered debris. The crystal pulsed faintly, the warrior's breathing steady. Gideon realized the full impact. The invaders were not just scouts, they were part of a larger war. Earth had been tested and humans had passed. Courage, determination, intelligence, and empathy, traits often underestimated, had turned the tide. He looked at the horizon, seeing faint silhouettes in the distance. The battle was won, but the war was far from over. The crystal pulsed, sending waves of energy through his body. He felt connected to something larger now, a galaxy-spanning conflict he had glimpsed but barely understood. And he knew one truth clearly: human courage mattered. Humans could shape destiny. Humans could stand against impossible odds. Gideon rose slowly, mud and rain dripping from him, and helped the warrior to its feet. Its wings stretched, battered but strong, eyes glowing amber. Together they stepped into the field, side by side, ready to face whatever came next. A pulse of energy from the crystal illuminated the distant horizon. Shapes moved again, larger, faster, more intelligent, but Gideon didn't flinch. He had learned something no alien force could teach. The human mind, human heart, and human courage could change the fate of worlds. And somewhere beyond the horizon, a voice seemed to whisper in the crystal's pulse. The war had only just begun.